The galaxy had forgotten about humans a long time ago. 3,000 years had passed since any alien species had seen a human ship or heard a human voice. In the great libraries and data centers of the galaxy, humans were nothing more than old stories. They were entries in dusty archives that nobody read anymore. Most species believed humans had died out centuries ago, destroyed by their own wars, or swallowed by some natural disaster on their small blue planet. The Ithori Collective was one of the oldest civilizations in known space. Their bodies were made of living, crystal, beautiful, and ancient. They had watched countless species rise and fall across millions of years. To them, humans were just another failed experiment of nature. Their scholars had written that humans were soft, weak, and short-lived. They had never even left their home planet, according to the old records. The Korath Dominion was the other great power in the galaxy. They were massive creatures with 6 limbs and armored skin. They respected only strength and military power. When younger species asked about the humans mentioned in old texts, the Korath would laugh. "Prey animals," they would say. They probably ate themselves into extinction. But the galaxy had bigger problems than old legends. The Devourer swarm had come from the dark spaces between galaxies. Nobody knew where they truly originated. They were a hive mind. Millions of creatures sharing one terrible consciousness. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They only consumed. World after world fell to their endless hunger. The swarm would descend on a planet, strip it of all life, and move on to the next. The war had been going on for 50 years, and the galaxy was losing. Commander Xyrith stood on the bridge of his crystal ship, watching another distress signal fade into silence. Another colony gone. Another million lives consumed. His transparent body flickered with colors that showed his grief and anger. Emotions that his species displayed like humans might show expressions on their faces. "How many does that make this month?" he asked, his second officer. 17 worlds, Commander. The swarm is moving faster than our models predicted." Xyrith turned away from the screen. The Ithori were ancient and wise, but wisdom meant nothing against an enemy that could not be reasoned with. The Korath were powerful warriors, but even they were being pushed back on every front. The smaller species of the Galactic Coalition were being wiped out one by one, far away. On a remote monitoring station at the edge of explored space, a young Aetheri named Kethra was doing her job. She watched the sensors and recorded data about distant star systems. It was boring work, the kind given to junior officers who had not yet proven themselves. Most days, nothing happened. But today was different. Her console lit up with an alert she had never seen before. Something was emerging from an uncharted region of space. Not one ship, but many. Dozens at first. Then hundreds. The sensor data made no sense to her. The ship designs did not match any known species. They were angular and heavy, covered in armor plating and weapon systems. They looked like they were built for war, and nothing else. "Senior Officer Threll," she called out, her voice shaking slightly. "I have unknown contacts, many of them." Threll floated over to her station, his crystal form catching the light of her screens. He studied the data for a long moment. "Run identification protocols. Check against all known species." "I did, sir. No match." "Then check the historical archives. Go back as far as the system allows." Kethra did as she was told. The computer searched through thousands of years of records, comparing the unknown ship designs against ancient entries that had not been accessed in centuries. It took several minutes. When the result finally appeared, Kethra felt her crystalline structure vibrate with shock. "Sir," she whispered, "I have a match. But it cannot be right." "What does it say?" She turned to look at him. "Human. The ships are human." Threll stared at her. Then he stared at the screen. The word sat there. Impossible and undeniable. Human. A species that every scholar in the galaxy believed was dead and gone. A species that had supposedly never achieved space travel. A species that existed only in fragments of corrupted data and children's stories. "Send a priority message to High Command," Threll said slowly. Tell them the humans are real. And they are coming. Across the galaxy. The message spread from station to station, from fleet to fleet. Disbelief was the first reaction. Then, confusion. Then, slowly, fear, because if the old records were wrong about humans being extinct, what else were they wrong about? Commander Xyrith received the message on his ship. He read it 3 times before he believed it. His crew gathered around him, their crystal forms pulsing with uncertainty. Humans, one of them said. I thought they were just legends. Apparently not, Xyrith replied. He pulled up what little information existed about the species. The data was incomplete, corrupted by time. It spoke of a small planet, third from its sun. It mentioned a species that was constantly at war with itself. It noted their short lifespans and their fragile bodies. But there was one line that caught his attention. It was written by an Aethori observer who had briefly studied Earth many thousands of years ago, before contact was lost. These creatures possess an unusual quality, the ancient text read. They do not accept defeat. Even when facing certain destruction, they continue to fight. They adapt. They change. They find ways to survive that defy logical prediction. Further study is recommended. No further study had ever been conducted. The humans had disappeared from observation, and everyone assumed they had simply died out like so many other primitive species. Now they were back. And they had ships. Hundreds of ships. Armed and ready for war. Xyrith looked at the tactical display showing the unknown fleet moving steadily toward Coalition space. He did not know if these humans were friends or enemies. He did not know what they wanted or why they had chosen this moment to reveal themselves. But as he watched those heavy, armored vessels cutting through the darkness of space, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. And underneath the hope, just a small whisper of something else. Fear. Because if a species could hide for 3,000 years, building ships like that in secret, what else were they capable of? The galaxy was about to find out. Captain Daniel Carter had waited his entire life for this moment. He stood on the bridge of the Resolute, humanity's greatest warship, and watched alien space unfold on the view screens around him. Stars that no human had ever seen up close. Nebulae that existed only in old telescope images. A whole galaxy that had moved on without them. Believing they were dead and forgotten, they were wrong. Daniel was 42 years old. He had been born on the colony ship Hope, one of the massive vessels that had carried humanity away from Earth 200 years ago. His grandparents had made the decision to flee. His parents had grown up in the darkness between stars. And Daniel had trained his whole life for war, knowing that one day humanity would have to face the galaxy again. Behind the Resolute, 200 more human ships followed in formation. They were not beautiful vessels. They were not elegant or artistic, like the crystal ships of the Aethori. They were brutal machines of war, covered in thick armor and heavy weapons. Every inch of their design served a purpose. They had been built by a species that understood survival better than anyone. Sir, we are detecting an alien fleet on intercept course. Lieutenant Maya Torres reported from her tactical station. She was young, only 26, but she had graduated top of her class at the military academy. Her hands moved across her console with practice speed. Configuration matches Aethori patrol vessels. 12 ships total. Any hostile action? Not yet. They are scanning us. I think they are trying to figure out what we are. Daniel smiled slightly. He could imagine the confusion on the other side. The Aethori had never seen a human ship before. Their databases had no reference for the heavy, angular design. To them, the human fleet must have looked like something from a nightmare. Open a communication channel, he ordered. Let us introduce ourselves. The view screen flickered, and then Daniel was looking at an alien being for the first time in his life. Commander Xyrith appeared before him, a creature of living crystal that seemed to glow from within. His form was humanoid, but clearly not human. Colors rippled across his transparent body, expressing emotions that Daniel could not read. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves, Xyrith said. His voice was translated by the ship's computer. coming through flat and mechanical. "You have entered Aethery-controlled space." Daniel straightened his uniform. He had practiced this moment 1,000 times in his mind. Every word mattered. Every gesture could shape the future of his species. "I am Captain Daniel Carter of the Terran Defense Fleet," he said clearly. "We are humans. We come from Earth, a planet in the outer arm of the galaxy. And we are here to help." The silence that followed was long and heavy. Daniel watched the colors shifting across Zyreth's crystalline form, faster and more chaotic than before. The alien was shocked. Completely and utterly shocked. "Humans," Zyreth finally said. "The records say your species never achieved interstellar travel. The records are out of date. The records say you destroyed yourselves in primitive wars." "We almost did," Daniel admitted. "Several times. But we learned. We built. We survived. And you hid." There was something in the alien's voice now. Suspicion, perhaps, or anger. "For 3,000 years, you hid while the galaxy burned. While billions died. While the swarm consumed world after world." Daniel felt the weight of that accusation. It was true. Humanity had hidden. They had watched the war from the shadows, observing but never interfering. It had been a deliberate choice, made by leaders who were long dead now. A choice to protect humanity first, above all else. But that time was over. "We hid because we had to," Daniel said. "We were not ready. Our ships were few. Our technology was limited. If we had revealed ourselves too soon, we would have been destroyed. And then we would have been no help to anyone. And now you believe you are ready? Now we know we are ready." Zyreth studied him for a long moment. The colors on his body slowly settled into calmer patterns. "You will need to prove that. Words mean nothing in war. Then let us prove it with actions." Daniel nodded to Maya, who brought up a tactical display. It showed the nearby sector, including a planet that was currently under attack by swarm forces, Verath Minor, one of your agricultural colonies. "Our sensors show swarm vessels in orbit. The planet will fall within 6 hours unless someone intervenes." "We know," Zyreth said bitterly. "We have no ships to spare. The colony is already lost. Not if we get there in time." Daniel leaned forward. "My fleet can reach Verath Minor in 2 hours. We can engage the swarm and break their siege. All I need is your permission to cross into Coalition territory." The Authority commander's colors flickered again. Daniel could see the internal struggle happening. Trust a completely unknown species with the lives of millions? Or let those millions die? "Why?" Zyreth asked. "Why would you risk your ships and your people for a world that means nothing to you?" Daniel thought about how to answer. He could talk about strategy, about how helping the Coalition served human interests. He could talk about politics, about how this would earn humanity a place at the table of galactic powers. Both of those things were true, but they were not the real reason, because that is what humans do, he said simply. "We fight. Not because it is easy. Not because we know we will win. We fight because it is the right thing to do. We fight because we refuse to watch innocent people die when we have the power to stop it." Zyreth was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, the colors across his body settled into a pattern that Daniel would later learn meant respect. "You have permission to enter Coalition space," the Authority commander said. "Save that colony. Human. And perhaps then we will believe your words." Daniel nodded. "We will not let you down." He cut the communication and turned to his crew. Every face was looking at him, waiting for orders. These were his people. His family. They had trained together, lived together, dreamed of this moment together. "All ships," he announced over the fleet communication system. "Set course for Verath Minor, maximum speed. We have a colony to save and a galaxy to impress." The human fleet moved as one, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Behind them, Commander Zyreth watched them go, still not quite believing what he had seen. Humans. Real, living humans. with ships and weapons and a fire in their eyes that he had not seen in any species for a very long time. He did not know if they could actually save Varath Minor. The swarm had never been pushed back from a world they had chosen to consume, but as he watched those angular warships disappear into the distance, he found himself hoping that the old whispers were true, hoping that these strange, soft, short-lived creatures were everything the ancient texts had hinted they might be, and hoping that, for the first time in 50 years, the galaxy might have a chance. The battle for Varath Minor lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the colony still stood. The swarm had been driven back, their ships burning in orbit, while the survivors fled into deep space. It was the first time in the entire war that a swarm assault had been completely defeated, the first time a targeted world had been saved. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Communication networks that had carried nothing but reports of defeat and death for 50 years suddenly had something different to share. Hope. A word that had almost been forgotten, but not everyone was celebrating. On the neutral station of Nexus Prime, the leaders of the Galactic Coalition had gathered for an emergency meeting. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives of 12 different species, each one more powerful and ancient than humanity. They had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They had built empires that spanned thousands of worlds. And now they were being asked to accept help from a species they had dismissed as primitive and extinct. Admiral Grace Palmer walked into that chamber alone. She was 73 years old, with silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen more than most people could imagine. She had been a fighter pilot in her youth, then a ship captain, then a fleet commander. Now she led humanity's entire military, a position she had held for over 20 years. She had planned humanity's return to the galaxy. She had overseen the building of their fleet, and she had given the order to reveal themselves when the time was right. The aliens stared at her as she walked to the center of the room. Some of them towered over her, massive creatures that could crush a human with one limb. Others were so small she could barely see them. All of them looked at her with a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and something that might have been fear. High Arbiter Veloth of the Aethori spoke first. His crystalline form glittered under the chamber's lights, and his voice echoed off the walls. You claim to be human. You claim your species built a fleet in secret and hid from the galaxy for 3,000 years. You claim you can help us win this war. I do not claim these things, Grace replied calmly. I state them as facts. Facts require evidence. Varath Minor is your evidence. My ships saved that colony when your fleets could not. A rumble of discontent moved through the chamber. General Krathos of the Korath Dominion stepped forward. He was enormous, nearly 3 meters tall, with armored plates covering his entire body. His species had been warriors for longer than humans had existed. One battle proves nothing, he growled. Any fool can win once through luck. The swarm will adapt. They always do. And when they return in greater numbers, what will your little fleet do then? Grace met his eyes without flinching. She had expected this challenge. The Korath respected only strength, and they would not accept humanity until humanity proved itself stronger than them. The swarm adapts, she agreed. So do we. That is what humans do, General. We adapt. We learn. We change. Every time we face a new threat, we find new ways to fight it. We have been doing this for our entire history. Your history is short and bloody, Krathos sneered. Our scholars studied your world. Long ago. You spent most of your existence killing each other. Wars over land. Wars over resources. Wars over ideas. You are a violent, primitive species. Yes, Grace said simply. We are. The chamber fell silent. Even Krathos seemed surprised by her honesty. We are violent, Grace continued. We have fought wars that killed millions of our own kind. We have created weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We have come close to ending ourselves more than once. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we are still here. Every time we fell, we got back up. Every time we faced extinction, we found a way to survive. And every time we thought we had reached our limit, we discovered we could go further. She activated a holographic display at the center of the chamber. Images appeared, showing the history of human warfare. Ancient soldiers with swords and shields, sailors on wooden ships, soldiers in muddy trenches, aircraft filling the sky, missiles rising from hidden silos, and finally, humanity's secret fleet, the ships they had built in the shadows of the galaxy. "You think our violence is a weakness," Grace said. "I tell you it is our greatest strength. We know war. We understand it better than any species in this galaxy. We have been practicing for thousands of years." She zoomed in on one of their warships. Every design choice, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine, all of it comes from centuries of hard-won experience. We know how to fight, and more importantly, we know how to win. The representatives murmured among themselves. Some were impressed. Others were disturbed. A few looked like they were reconsidering their initial judgments. Lieutenant Commander Nathan Cole watched from the observation gallery above the chamber. He was Admiral Palmer's aide, a young officer who had been chosen for his intelligence and his calm under pressure. He had never seen his commander speak like this before, never seen her lay humanity's soul bare for alien eyes to judge. But he understood why she was doing it. The coalition needed to know what they were getting into. If they accepted human help, they were not just accepting ships and weapons. They were accepting a species that thought differently than anyone else in the galaxy. A species that fought dirty and never gave up, and would do whatever it took to win. "You want to know why we hid for so long," Grace said. "I will tell you. We hid because we knew we were not ready. We hid because we knew that if we revealed ourselves too soon, you would see us as a threat. You would try to control us, or destroy us, or use us as weapons against your enemies. We were not strong enough to resist that." "And now?" Veloth asked. "Are you strong enough now?" Grace smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Now we are strong enough to be useful. Strong enough to help you win this war. And strong enough to walk away if you do not want our help." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. Some demanded that the humans be arrested. Others insisted they be welcomed as allies. The debate went on for hours, with Grace standing calmly at the center of it all. In the end, there was only one choice that made sense. The swarm was winning, the coalition was losing, and humanity was offering something that no one else could provide. A new way of thinking. A new way of fighting. A chance, however small, to turn the tide. When the vote was called, it was not unanimous, but it was enough. Humanity was welcomed into the Galactic Coalition. Not as full members, not yet, but as allies. Partners in the war against the swarm. A species that had been whispers and legends just days ago, now standing beside the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Grace Palmer accepted the decision with a simple nod. "Thank you," she said. "You will not regret this." As she walked out of the chamber, Nathan fell into step beside her. "Do you think they actually trust us?" he asked quietly. "No," Grace replied. "But they are afraid. And they are desperate. Trust will come later. If we earn it." She looked out at the stars through the station's windows. For now, fear and desperation will have to be enough. The real work was just beginning. 6 months after humanity joined the coalition, the swarm made its biggest move of the entire war. They came for Verath Prime. It was not a small colony like Verath Minor. Verath Prime was one of the most important worlds in coalition space. It produced food for 12 star systems. Billions of lives depended on its harvests. If it fell, entire civilizations would starve within a year. The swarm knew this. That was why they sent everything they had. Captain Daniel Carter stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the enemy fleet emerge from hyperspace. The numbers on his tactical display kept climbing. 1,000 ships, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. The swarm had gathered forces from across the galaxy for this attack. They were not just trying to take Verath Prime. They were trying to break the coalition completely. How many ships do we have? Daniel asked. Lieutenant Maya Torres checked her console. Combined coalition and human forces number approximately 3,000 vessels. 3 against 10. Those were not good odds. But Daniel had fought with worse. Admiral Palmer's face appeared on the communication screen. She was aboard the command station orbiting Varith Prime, coordinating the entire defense. Daniel, I need you to lead the main assault. The Athori and Korath fleets will support you, but our ships are faster and hit harder. You have to punch through to the swarm's command organisms. Understood, Admiral. Daniel. Her voice softened slightly. Good luck, he nodded. Same to you, ma'am. The battle began with fire and chaos. The swarm attacked in waves. Millions of small creatures supported by massive biological warships. They did not fight like normal enemies. They had no fear, no hesitation, no concern for their own survival. Every creature was part of the hive mind, and the hive mind had only one goal: consume everything. Human ships dove into the swarm formation, their heavy weapons tearing through enemy ranks. Where coalition vessels fought in careful patterns, humans fought with controlled chaos. They used asteroids as shields. They crashed damaged ships into enemy formations. They did things that no sane species would ever try. And somehow, they survived. Lieutenant Zoe Mitchell led her fighter squadron through the heart of the battle. She was 24 years old, the youngest squadron leader in the fleet. Her parents had been farmers on one of humanity's colony ships. She had grown up among stars and endless space, dreaming of being a pilot. Now she was living that dream. And it was a nightmare. Focus on the command organisms, she ordered her pilots. Take out the big brains, and the little ones get confused. The swarm's command organisms were massive, ugly creatures protected by layers of smaller drones. Getting close to them was almost impossible. Almost. Zoe's squadron dove through enemy fire, losing ships with every second. By the time they reached the first command organism, only 4 pilots remained out of 12. But 4 was enough. Their missiles struck true, and the creature exploded in a burst of organic matter. Around it, thousands of drones suddenly lost coordination, crashing into each other or simply stopping in place. It works, Zoe reported. Take out the commanders, and the swarm falls apart. But there were hundreds of command organisms, and humanity only had so many pilots. On the other side of the battle, Commander Ryan Bishop watched the tactical display with growing despair. His ship, the Vanguard, was a converted cargo hauler. It was slow, poorly armed, and not meant for frontline combat. But it had one thing that no other ship in the fleet possessed: enough explosives to destroy a small moon. The plan had been Admiral Palmer's idea. A suicide mission aimed at the swarm's mothership, the central intelligence that controlled the entire hive mind. If the mothership died, the swarm would be crippled, maybe permanently. Ryan had volunteered before anyone else could speak. He was 47 years old. He had a daughter back on one of the colony ships, a girl of 16 who had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness. His wife had died 5 years ago, taken by a disease that human medicine still could not cure. Since then, Ryan had been looking for a reason to keep going. A purpose that made the pain worthwhile. He had found it. Vanguard to all ships, he transmitted. Beginning final approach. Clear the corridor. The human fleet responded immediately, forming a protective path through the chaos of battle. Athori crystal ships and Korath warships joined them, understanding what was happening even if they did not approve of it. Enemy after enemy was destroyed or pushed aside. The corridor held. Ryan watched the mothership grow larger on his view screen. It was the size of a planet, a living mountain of flesh and hatred. Millions of years of evolution had created this thing. Millions of years of consuming other species, absorbing their knowledge, growing stronger with every world it ate. It would not eat today. Tell my daughter I kept my promise, Ryan transmitted to the Resolute. Tell her I love her. Tell her to be brave. Then he pushed the engines to maximum and dove straight into the mothership's core. The explosion was visible from orbit, The mothership came apart in a flash of light so bright that sensors across the system were temporarily blinded. When vision returned, there was only debris where the creature had been, a cloud of dead flesh spreading slowly through space. And with it, the swarm died too. Not all of them, not immediately. But the connection that held them together was broken. Command organisms tried to take control, but they were designed to follow, not lead. Without the mothership, they were just animals. Dangerous animals, but animals nonetheless. The coalition forces, barely believing what they were seeing, pressed the attack. Hours of desperate fighting followed, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. By the time the last swarm ship was destroyed, Vareth Prime still stood. The cost was enormous. Half the human fleet was gone. Thousands of coalition ships had been destroyed. Millions of soldiers from a dozen different species had died, defending a world that most of them had never seen. But they had won. On the bridge of the Resolute, Daniel Carter sat in his chair and stared at the debris field that had once been the swarm mothership. Somewhere in that cloud of destruction was Ryan Bishop. A man he had known for 20 years. A friend. A brother in everything but blood. Maya Torres approached him quietly. "Sir, Admiral Palmer wants to speak with you." Daniel did not move. "Give me a minute." "Yes, sir." She walked away, leaving him alone with his grief. Around him, his crew celebrated their survival, their victory, their impossible triumph against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for half a century. Daniel did not celebrate. He mourned. And he remembered, because that was what humans did. They fought. They won. They paid the price. And they never forgot the ones who paid more than anyone else. Ryan Bishop had been a hero, not because he wanted to die, but because he wanted his daughter to live. He wanted all the children of all the species in the galaxy to live. That was worth dying for. That was worth everything. The war did not end with the Battle of Vareth Prime. But everything changed after it. The swarm, without its mothership, fragmented into smaller groups. Some continued to attack, driven by instinct and hunger. Others fled into the dark spaces between stars, hiding in places no one wanted to follow. The threat was not gone, but it was broken. For the first time in 50 years, the galaxy could breathe, and everyone knew who to thank for it. Admiral Grace Palmer stood before the Galactic Coalition, just as she had 6 months earlier. But this time, the chamber was different. The suspicion and fear that had greeted her before was gone. In its place was something new: respect, gratitude, and perhaps, just beginning to form, trust. High Arbiter Veloth spoke for the Etheri. "We have discussed your status for many hours." The debate was long, but the conclusion was clear. He paused, his crystalline form glowing with soft light. "Humanity is no longer an ally of convenience. You are full members of the Galactic Coalition, with all the rights and responsibilities that come with it." Grace nodded. "We are honored." "You are also frightening," Veloth added. "But that is a discussion for another day." A ripple of something like laughter moved through the chamber. Even General Krathos of the Korath, who had once dismissed humans as prey animals, seemed amused. He approached Grace after the ceremony, his massive form towering over her. "You fought well," he said simply. "Your Commander Bishop, he was a warrior." "He was," Grace agreed. "He was one of our best." The Korath have a tradition. When a warrior dies in battle, we speak their name at every gathering for 1 year, so that their spirit may hear and know they are remembered. Krathos looked down at her. "I would like to add his name to our list, if you permit it." Grace felt unexpected tears forming in her eyes. Krathos nodded and walked away. It was not much, but it was something. A bridge between species that had once seen each other as nothing more than old legends and primitive creatures. Captain Daniel Carter was promoted to Rear Admiral. He did not want the position. He wanted to stay on the Resolute, fighting the remaining swarm forces, doing the work he had trained his whole life to do. But Admiral Palmer insisted. "You understand how aliens think," she told him. "You fought beside them. You earned their respect. Now you need to teach them how we fight." "They have been fighting wars for millions of years," Daniel pointed out. What can we teach them? How to be unpredictable. How to take risks. How to win when all the logic says you should lose. She smiled slightly. They are very good at war, Daniel. But they fight like scholars. They analyze. They calculate. They make rational decisions based on probability and statistics. And humans? Humans are not rational. We fight with our hearts as much as our heads. Sometimes that makes us foolish. But sometimes it makes us dangerous in ways that no one can predict. That is our gift to the coalition. That is what you will teach them. Daniel accepted the promotion. It was difficult work, trying to explain human tactics to species that thought in completely different ways. The Aethori wanted mathematical models and precise predictions. The Korath wanted clear hierarchies and direct orders. Neither understood the chaotic creativity that made human warfare unique, but slowly, progress was made. Coalition officers began experimenting with human techniques. Some worked. Some failed spectacularly. But the failures taught lessons too, and over time, the galaxy's defenders became something new. Something stronger than any of them had been alone. On Earth, the news of victory sparked celebrations that lasted for weeks. For the first time in 200 years, humanity's homeworld was connected to the Galactic Communication Network. Messages flowed back and forth between Earth and the colony ships, between humans who had never known each other, sharing stories and memories and hopes for the future. The children of Earth learned about Commander Ryan Bishop in their schools. They learned about the pilots who died at Verath Prime. They learned about Admiral Palmer and Captain Carter and all the others who had risked everything to give humanity a second chance among the stars. They also learned about the galaxy they now belonged to. The Aethori and their crystal cities. The Korath and their warrior traditions. The dozen smaller species, each with their own cultures and histories and dreams. The universe was bigger and stranger than any generation of humans had ever known, and humanity was finally part of it. In the great archive of the Aethori Collective, Kethra was given a special honor. She had been the first to detect the human fleet all those months ago. Now she was tasked with writing humanity's new entry in the permanent records. She worked on it for weeks, struggling to capture everything she had learned about these strange, contradictory creatures. In the end, she kept it simple. Humans, she wrote. Classification. Active. Status. Full coalition members. Homeworld. Earth. Third planet of the Sol system. Assessment. Previously believed extinct. Historical records were incorrect. Humans survived, adapted, and built a civilization in secret at the edge of known space. They revealed themselves during the Devourer War and played a crucial role in the defeat of the Swarm mothership. She paused, then added a personal note. They were whispers in our oldest stories. Legends that no one believed. Now they walk among us, fight beside us, and die for causes that are not their own. They are violent and unpredictable. They are short-lived and fragile. They are also brave and stubborn, and absolutely unwilling to accept defeat. They call this quality hope. I believe it is their greatest strength. The note spread through the archives and beyond. It was copied and translated into 100 different languages. It became famous across the galaxy. A symbol of how much had changed since humanity returned. Admiral Palmer read it in her quarters on Nexus Prime. She was alone, as she often was, looking out at the stars through the station's windows. Lieutenant Commander Nathan Cole found her there late one evening, standing in the darkness with the message displayed on her tablet. "Do you think we have actually won?" he asked quietly. "The swarm is still out there. There could be other threats we do not know about yet." Grace considered the question. "I think we have won something important," she said finally. "We have won our place in the galaxy. We have won the right to be taken seriously. We have won allies who will stand beside us when the next threat comes. And when it does come," she turned to look at him, her old eyes sharp and certain. "Then we will fight. That is what humans do. We fight. We lose. We get back up. We find new ways to win. We never give up, no matter how bad things look." She looked back at the stars. They called us whispers once. Old stories that nobody believed. They thought we were weak, primitive, extinct. Her voice hardened with pride. Now they know the truth. Humans are not whispers. We are a promise. A promise that no matter how dark the galaxy becomes, someone will always be willing to fight for the light. The war continued. New threats emerged. The galaxy remained dangerous and uncertain, but humanity was no longer hiding. They were no longer forgotten. They were exactly where they belonged, among the stars,